You despise me, don't you?
Hell, if I gave you any thought, I probably would.
Welcome back to our Oscar season movie reviews. Today, our movie in the middle is Casablanca. Casablanca is directed by Michael Curtiz and stars Humphrey Bogart, Ingrid Bergman, and Paul Henreid. The Oscar-winning movie follows Rick Blaine, a club owner in the titular Casablanca, who must choose between his own safety and aiding a rebel against the Germans in World War II when his old lover shows up with her husband. This is in my top 5 for favorite old movies. Old meaning probably 50s and back. The biggest high for this movie is definitely the characters. They're just so interesting for being an older movie, because I don't want to be that person that stereotypes older movies, but a lot of older movies are kind of the same. They kind of have the same feel. The characters sometimes aren't that interesting. But these characters, while they're going through very surface level, politics or romance plots, they're interesting. Rick Blaine, played by Humphrey Bogart, is a cool dude. I mean, come on, he's just cool. And he's also a good guy. He doesn't come off that way because he seems very selfish and he seems very doing things just for him, very reserved, and I don't want to get into that, and you go do your thing, but get out of my saloon if you're going to talk about politics, whatever it might be. But he does these things throughout the film that you can tell he might act that way, but every so often he does good things for people. His only weakness is that he lets his emotions get the better of him for a lot of the movie. And sometimes that's a good thing and sometimes that's a bad thing. But no matter what he does, he never strays from who he is or what he's trying to do for himself. He might help other people, he might help himself, but he always has his own sort of moral compass and his own agenda. And then, of course, you have Ilsa and Victor Laszlo, who are the two people who are trying to get out of Casablanca and go to America and need Rick's help because he has the letters of transport that they need. And their relationship, Elsa and Victor, their relationship is interesting because it's kind of this push for Rick, but Rick and Elsa's past, their relationship, the mystery of what happened between them is really interesting and kind of drives the whole plot of the movie, and this mystery that we don't find out until the end of what happened on this day that he left and she didn't come with him. My other favorite character is Captain Louis, who is an officer in Casablanca, but is obviously sort of a second rank to all of the Germans who are infiltrating and tell him what to do. He has to do what they tell him. And yet, he's kind of a little bit of a corrupted officer, not in like a bad way, but in like, he doesn't necessarily want to be doing all the things that he doesn't want to do any of what the Germans say, but he has to. So whenever he gets a chance to, like, I don't know, talk back a little bit or not do what they tell him to do, he takes that chance. At one point, is told that he has to shut down the saloon, and he's like, I have no reason to. And they're like, find a reason. So
How can you close me up? On what ground?
I'm shocked to find that gambling is going on in here.
You're winning, sir.
Oh, thank you very much. Everybody out at once.
He's such a funny character. It's like he's one of the best characters, I think, for like comic relief and in general that I've seen in any old movie. And I think that gets into like what I personally think is the best thing about this movie is not just the characters, but the fact that everything, almost everything, holds up now. If you watched, I think it was maybe one of my first movie suggestion days when the pandemic started, I think Casablanca was in that set. What I had said there is true now. Everything in this movie, from the jokes to the plot to just how people interacted with each other, it's stuff that you would see today. It's how things would be written today, almost. So just considering that this was the 1940s, it's really cool that people flock to the movie theater to go watch this today. And not just because it's an old movie and we have to appreciate old movies, but because it's genuinely fun and interesting and genuinely entertaining. I went to see this with my mom at the Senator Theater 2 years ago, I think, and the whole place was filled up. Not even just with people who were probably, young when it came out, or even just a little bit older, than me, who just appreciate old movies, but like young people were there too. Like, it isn't a very entertaining movie. I mean, not even just in jokes, but like in the lines. I mean, this is a super iconic movie in film history. It's constantly referenced and it's constantly quoted because we got so many memorable quotes from this. Usually you get maybe one or two per, classic movie. This one I think has like 6 or 7. I mean,
Here's looking at you, kid. Of all the gin joints in all the towns in all the world, she walks into mine.
Play it, Sam. Play as time goes by.
Round up the usual suspects.
We'll always have Paris. Ilsa, I'm no good at being noble, but it doesn't take much to see that the problems of 3 little people don't amount to a hill of beans in this crazy world. Louis, I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
and finally the setting is just really fun because you have this one location where all of these different countries are coming together and talking about different politics and different dynamics are happening between them. But also the saloon itself is very fun. I mean, the first third of the movie is all one scene basically inside this saloon, meeting Rick, meeting these other characters, having Elsa and Victor Laszlo come in, and Sam, who is the musician, he's the piano player, singing all of these really fun songs. It's just cool to be able to see all of these different things that are going on, and some things that don't even really affect the plot, but are just for contextual, reference about the people in Casablanca, and they're waiting to try to get out of Casablanca. Or, just like little funny moments here and there between different characters who are just kind of there, and they may not really serve the plot, but they're just there for like like creating this atmosphere. It's really fun. If I have lows for the movie, they're lows, but they're not really. Let me explain. The first one is that it does get a little politics dense in spots. Most of it's very entertaining, but some of it can be like, okay, we were talking about a lot of politics, and it's getting a little, in the weeds here. I want to get back to like the main story and the characters and everything. And understandably, it all serves the plot because the plot is politics. It's we're trying to catch this one guy, and we got to see if we have grounds to catch him, and all this other stuff. So it needs to be there. But it just gets here and there just a little, I don't say boring, but just like slow, a little dense. But again, it's not really so much a low against the movie because it does need to be there. And the other low is that being a 1940s movie, there still are some moments, despite the fact that it does hold up very well today, there are still some moments that are cheesy, that are very dramatic. Like, they kiss and like she swats like a wine glass and it just spills all over the place. Or, he's very sad and he's drinking and suddenly he just boom right into his arms. So there is that. And there are a lot of those like, very cheesy romance moments and things like that. It all goes along with that old film thing. You have like the really like glistening glow when they're together and she's standing in the light, or you have like these really swift camera movements, which are really cool, by the way. It does still have that, and at some point you can be like, all right, that was a little dramatic, that was a little funny, that was a little cheesy. However, I think that it is excusable because of the time period it was in. Obviously, that's just how they did it, and also because, thinking about film history, you kind of need that. We obviously don't get those types of things today, which is good because movies are more realistic, for the most part. In thinking about film history and being like appreciating old films, you have to be like, yeah, that's how they were back then, and that's just, we need that. I don't know how else to put it, but if you're like a cinephile, I think you get what I mean. Casablanca is a very fun movie. It's very entertaining considering that the decade that it was made in. It still holds up today. People flock to go see it. It has fun characters, very interesting characters, incredibly realistic and emotional dynamics. And while it may have some of those cheesy moments, it really all serves the purpose of being probably one of the best old classic movies ever made. I'm going to give Casablanca a 4 out of 4. And of course, it is a top shelf movie. I guess you could say this movie does amount to a hill of beans. What did you think of Casablanca if you've seen it? If you haven't seen it, go see it. But if you have seen it, what did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you find it as entertaining as I did? Or do you think it's kind of just another old movie that's a little slow and boring? Because again, I can see that, in some respects. Stick around for some more Oscar movie reviews from the past and from this upcoming year, and as always, keep your hopes high, your stress low, and old movies right in the middle. Here's looking at you.